Hey, Jake, welcome to the Marketing Innovators podcast. I would like to start off by just asking a little bit about yourself, your background.
Yeah. So my name is Jake Jorgovan, and I am the founder of two companies. One is called Lead Cookie, which we are basically a B2B lead generation agency. So we do outbound LinkedIn, cold email, and cold calling to generate B2B appointments. And the other company that I run is called Content Allies, and we produce revenue generating podcasts. Where basically we help people start podcasts where they can interview either their prospects, strategic partners, influencers in their field, and really use podcasting as a content creation and a networking tool to really do business development for their company. So those are the two companies that I am running today, and I'm also an active blogger on my site and podcaster as well.
That's really interesting. So you're running a number of different kinds of companies, but they all have to do with generating business growth. And I'm thinking to myself that there are so many different podcasts out there. Has the space not become saturated now?
So there's one. This is kind of the question that I think the frame that everyone immediately puts podcasting in whenever they think about podcasting is, how am I going to get an audience? How am I going to grow? And while in having an audience of a podcast is amazing, and as you start doing a podcast, if you put out good quality content and you share it and you promote it, like you'll gather an audience and listeners over time. But one of the big things that I am a believer of with podcasting, especially in light of COVID and this pandemic where conferences or anything, is like, I want to say like podcasting is like the new conferences and the new physical events because it's a networking tool where you can really just, go interview people and have conversations and you're creating value, you're creating content. You're meeting people at the same time though. And so I look at the audience that comes from podcasting as kind of this probably like third or fourth or maybe even fifth benefit of podcasting, but the networking, the fact that you're able to position yourself as an authority, the fact that you're able to reach out to people as, a leader in the space. There's all of these other benefits that come from podcasting even before, say, like the inbound lead aspect that comes from an audience. And so that's kind of a way that I always like to try to rephrase people as they think about podcasting when they're worried about the segmentation side of it.
Hmm. Interesting. So when it comes to, obviously lead generation and the lead cookies company, can you maybe give me a bit more background as far as what is how do you impact the bottom line of the business? Is it primarily through LinkedIn that you focus on?
Yeah, so for Lead Cookie, our journey, we started off really as a LinkedIn lead generation agency. That's how we began 3.5, almost 4 years ago now. And so LinkedIn was really where we started, and that was just all we did. And it was really cool because we caught the wave of LinkedIn, like right as this was becoming popular and LinkedIn outreach. Like whenever it sounds crazy, but whenever I started Lead Cookie, I literally did a competitive analysis. I did a full out like business plan on this thing, and I found 7 people that were doing LinkedIn outreach as a service. And now you probably get 7 messages a day from people trying to sell you LinkedIn outreach as a service. And so it's crazy how fast that landscape has changed. And so, we evolved as well over time where we quickly knew that LinkedIn was getting saturated. And we also didn't want to be solely dependent on a single platform. So we're now basically a full outbound B2B lead generation agency where we do, LinkedIn, cold email, and cold phone calling. Doing all of that really with, it's an age old business model of you need sales meetings and we do outreach and try to get you sales meetings. So
Mm,
that is pretty much kind of what we do and how it's evolved since the start.
mm. Well, I mean, being in the digital space, just for myself, speaking for myself here, since 1998, the earlier days of the internet, so much has changed, and especially since the introduction of social media and when LinkedIn was originally started as well. The crowd was very different at that stage, and the behavior online has completely changed drastically since then. So we find that the digital space is very turbulent. It's always changing. How do you really stay ahead of the pack when it comes to these changes and especially algorithmic changes when it comes to LinkedIn? There's all kinds of updates that they're doing to their platform to increase engagement. So how do you actually stay ahead of the pack?
Yeah. So the way I like to think about it is really, it comes down to just choosing your lane. And so for us with outbound, with say like cold email and LinkedIn, you can stay ahead of the curve by just going really deep in this area. So when it comes to like outbound, like we were right on the edge. We understand everything around cold email deliverability rates. We're there. We're in like masterminds with other companies that are doing similar things. So we're learning like what is the cutting edge stuff in that space. And so I think like one way to stay ahead is like you got to pick your lane and stay in it. And I think, where I've gone like a little chaotic at times and where I think it gets really hard is if you're constantly shifting to whatever the new tactic is. And I think that that is where companies can get in a lot of trouble, or they struggle, or they just go crazy trying to keep up. Because if you're constantly trying to just jump on whatever the next tactic is, then like everything's custom all the time. You can't really have processes. You're just chasing a whim, and then you might go on all this investment into something that just disappears.
Mm,
And so that's the way I like to look for things that are tried and true. Like we know that they're going to stay the same, but there's going to be slight shifts. And so, like for example, lead cookie, it's like outbound sales. Like it's going to happen. There's LinkedIn, there's email, there's calling. Maybe other channels pop up over time, but like those are the things. Let's just understand those. And then when you look at podcasting or content allies, there's a period where we were generalist content agency, and that was so hard. There's so many things. It's like the algorithms, all these things are like, hey, like let's just own podcasting. Let's understand podcasting really deeply and be at the forefront of podcasting, because we cannot be at the forefront of content. That is too big, and there's too many crazy things going on all the time. And so
mm,
I like to try to kind of pick that small lane and just try to stay like really top of mind there and keep an eye on the things that are in that lane. But like if it's out of the lane, like don't deviate, because I think if you're trying to just chase every shiny new marketing opportunity that comes up, you'll just exhaust all your resources, and you can invest in a lot of things that just disappear really quickly. So
mm. Absolutely. I mean, you have this really saturated space of all these marketing companies which are promising so many things to their clients, and you have to, I think, differentiate yourself in that space by focusing on certain areas and really specializing in those areas so you can generate value and results for your clients. We often come across many customers at times where they want to do everything. They just want to get out there. They just want to try everything and see what works. And sometimes what happens is that you spread yourself so thin that you just don't have the resources to really create an impact. So I guess that leads me to my next question, and that is, what is it that you do for your customers to be able to create a strong impact when it comes to really getting the message out there for your customers?
yeah, I think that comes down to really for us, it is a very, it's always a very consultative sale. There's a lot of companies out there that will just sell anything to anyone that will buy. And for us, it is in both my companies, it is very much like a consultative process of understanding, is this going to work for your business? And do we believe this is going to work? And do we believe this will generate an ROI? And that's the first step, is just really picking the right people, that what you're proposing, like your specialty, your niche, is the right choice for them. And it's crazy. We turn away, I'd say 90 to 95% of the leads we get at Lead Cookie. Probably similar on the Content Ally side as well. It's something where we don't want to just work with anybody. We want to work with people that what we are doing is the right fit. And that I think it just comes down to the best way to stay within the lane and deliver an impact is just making sure that if you're going to commit to doing something, you do it well and you commit to it all the way. And kind of what you said there on trying to do a million different things, like that's not the right fit. And customers that are trying to do that, or they want all of these things, or they're trying to customize or break out of what we know is like the tried and true approach, then like that's not for us in that extent. And so we look for people that are that right fit, that are right within there, that we know we can deliver results for.
Hmm. So let's talk about these two pieces over here that you have. One is podcasting, the other is LinkedIn. If you had some really good advice for our audience, for the business audience that wants to start a podcast, where would they get started?
Yeah. So I've got really great article on my site that I wrote recently on just on how to start a podcast, which is like the comprehensive guide from beginning to end, which I can kind of share here in the links. But that is one, very comprehensive kind of piece of it. But really, the biggest thing I would say is when you think about starting a podcast, it is kind of you want to think through like how do I create a podcast that is going to be of interest to feature, I guess, my prospects and my partners. Like, what is interesting to them? And one of the biggest mistakes I think that people can make is they make a podcast focused around their peers. And so I did this initially whenever I started my first podcast was focused, it was called Working Without Pants. And it was focused for agency owners, which was actually, that was my customer base at that point in time, was trying to work with just other agency owners, which was cool. But over time, I eventually realized I was like, oh, agencies aren't actually the customers I want. I want to work with larger, bigger companies that have larger budgets, and maybe agency owners they can still be great customers, but they're not the best customer for us. And so eventually I realized I was like, hey, I've got this podcast that's focused on my peers. And I think that that's a mistake that a lot of people make when they start doing content is they start speaking to their peers instead of to their target customers. And you can definitely still get value in speaking to your peers, and there's definitely still great relationships there. But I think if you're building something that is of interest, basically you can build something that is both of interest to your prospects and your peers. And I think that's where you get a really great win in kind of the approach that you're taking there.
Mm. And often what happens is that, when you're actually building content, especially with podcasts or articles and related to any content that you're creating as an organization, companies often forget marketing that content because that's a big piece in really getting the word out there.
Mhm.
So I think that, often that is missed in strategies where, you're investing so much time and money in building the content, but you're not paying enough attention to really promote the content, the valuable content that you've created. Going to the LinkedIn side of things. So if there's a company or business that is starting out on LinkedIn today, what would be your advice? Let's say if they have 1 hour to set up the perfect LinkedIn profile, and what are the steps that they need to be able to take in that first hour of going on LinkedIn to make their profile most effective and start their outreach?
Yeah, so the biggest things I would say is with your profile. So we'll start with just the profile optimization. Is the main thing you want to do is to move your profile from being me focused to prospect focused, to you focused. And what I mean by that is a lot of people have their LinkedIn profile where it looks just like a nice glorified resume. And there's something to be said about having credentials on there, making yourself look like a credible and reputable person. You do want some of that. But you also want to speak to really think about it more like a sales page or like website copy, where it is you're trying to hook in someone when that ideal person lands on your profile that they're interested in what you've written and they want to read more and see more. So that is kind of probably what I would say is like your biggest, if you got 60 minutes on your profile, I would say go revisit that profile and think about how to write that in a way that is going to interest your prospects, the people that are going to land on your profile. That would be my biggest tip for if you're looking to optimize your LinkedIn profile.
Excellent. And then, with regards to just making sure that, you are presenting yourself professionally online, obviously, there are ways to promote yourself on LinkedIn using their ad platform and so forth. Have you ever tried any of those platforms to really gain traction on some of the content that is being produced by companies?
Yeah, so with the LinkedIn's ads, it's a very expensive channel to go down. So it is very much designed for enterprise. So with LinkedIn as a ads platform, you're looking at probably again, I'm not a specialist in LinkedIn ads. I will tell you, I haven't gone too deep down that, but I'm very good friends with AJ Wilcox, who I believe his LinkedIn ads agency has spent more on LinkedIn ads than any other agency. And so that was at least as of a year or so ago, the last time he shared that stat with me. But what he said, his advice was like, if you're not going to spend at least $5,000 a month on ads, on LinkedIn, like it's not even worth going into because it's a very costly high cost per click.
Mm,
And so in what the other thing you shared is it's very much got to be like a content driven funnel, like getting someone to a lead magnet, getting them to opt in, like going a straight to like, ad to try to get a conversion is extremely expensive and like low conversion there. So it's, I have not done too much with LinkedIn ads, so I'll share with that. But I think, and for a lot of companies, it's honestly, it's just like out of reach or too risky to put that amount of budget toward it. So my most, I think the way that most companies get value out of LinkedIn these days is really looking at it from the terms of using it for sales outreach. For I believe it's $79 or $89 a month right now, you can get LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which lets you do a pretty high volume, 75 connection requests a day, reaching out to your target market. And
mm,
so it's much better as a sales enablement tool to do your prospecting because I'll tell you, there is no better professional database on the internet anymore than LinkedIn. It is simply the most up to date database of individuals at companies and ways to contact them. So I would say a Sales Navigator subscription is probably like the best thing for most companies that are trying to really get value out of LinkedIn.
mm. Excellent. So you've obviously been in business for about a decade or so right now, and can you tell me a little bit more about that journey, and also if you were to do things differently today than when you started this business, how would you do it differently?
Yeah, it's always the hard question, and it's the hindsight's 2020 kind of thing. Um, I think the looking back at it, I think some of the things that held me back were honestly a lot of internal things. It's the reason that I see why all these like business coaches and advisors exist. But there was so much of me just shooting myself in the foot for years, or being like really ADD and impatient and jumping from thing to thing and just sabotaging myself, or just creating a story in my head like I'm not good with finances or I'm not good with this. And so therefore, like I just didn't learn that business skill. I for years was like, I hate legal contracts until I find myself in a legal situation, and I'm like, you gotta learn. And so I think something that I wish I would have realized early on was that at the end of the day, if you're going in this journey in business, like there's no getting around learning money. There's no getting around learning legal contracts. There's no getting around learning how to be a better manager, or learning how to pay attention to the details. Like these are all things that if you want a successful business, you have to learn all of these skills eventually, at least to a base minimum level, so that you can manage and work with other people doing them. And I think I fought that for years. And it was, I mean, like I was, a few years into Lead Cookie when like my finances just like exploded, and I just had was doing horrible at managing them. And like we tried to do a sale of the business, and I just realized I was like, I need to fire my accountant. And like I had to reconcile 2.5 years of books in about 90 days. And it was one of the most worst experiences. But like out of that, I learned, and like I am freaking great with finances now. And so it's all these things where like I think the stories of like I'm not good at that. And I hear this from like early stage entrepreneurs all the time, or like that's not my strength. And I get that like you want to play to your strengths, but you've got to learn all the aspects of business in some level to be an entrepreneur. And so if you have something that's a weakness, like go get on LinkedIn Learning, go find a course and like level up on it, or find a book on it. And that is probably one of the biggest things I think that honestly held me back for so long.
And we live in such a beautiful age today where information is just at the tip of our fingertips, and we can search for any information, we can Google it and become experts in anything. We just have to take the time to be able to do that and develop that foundation to help us move forward and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. So that's really interesting. So from a perspective of marketing, you
Mhm.
know you've obviously grown both of these companies, and you've had some great successes and some failures. But from a marketing perspective, could you have done something differently to grow your businesses?
Um, I think the biggest thing I would say that um in some ways it even comes like that. I actually like kind of goes tying into what I just said. Like one of the things like I for a long time I was just like SEO, like that's just complicated. I don't want to dig into that. And like I just like ignored SEO for years. And it wasn't until I like made really good friends with an SEO guy who was like, dude, your personal website has a domain authority of 60. Like, why are you have no SEO strategy? And I was like, I've just been blogging over here for years and like, cause I like it. And I have this site that I'm like, wow, like I've got this amazing site that's like an incredible asset and I have zero SEO strategy on it. And I just have a few things that are kind of luckily ranking on Google of that, but like not even like they're in no way related. They're just like some random post I wrote. And so like that's actually become a big like eye opener for me of just like again all going back to the story of like SEO that's stupid, like that's just some like a bunch of skis balls like that are cold emailing me that are SEO guys, and then I meet a friend who's got like a legit SEO business and I'm like, wow dude, like that is insane what you're doing, like that stuff when it actually works. And he's like, yeah, like this guy, like I've he's a friend of mine. He's an SEO agency, and he built launched an influencer marketing agency. Inbeat.co is their site. They're really cool guys. And he like built this influencer marketing agency off of his SEO skills, grew it to like 60,000 visitors a month, and he's getting like gotmilk.com is cut like inbound leads, and like he's just like got like literally like 15 calls a week on his calendar. And it's just because he's like really freaking smart and he used all those skills. And I was like, wow, like I'm like SEO can work if you know what you're doing. And I think it's just to go in there again, like it's like these biases or these stories that you have in your head about something. And until you finally meet someone that's actually legitimate in it, and you're like, wow, that is completely untrue. So I think SEO was probably the untapped opportunity that I am just diving into this year. And I'm excited to see where it can take me because I fortunately have these like really great assets of websites already that I have not utilized. So
That's great. I mean, I think that goes to show that businesses have so many different channels to market their business. And sometimes we run a blank as far as, okay, where do we get started? I'd say that start at one place and do it really, really well, and then expand from there. When you're measuring your return on investment, just make sure that you're actually measuring the right metrics, and then getting back to what amount you're investing in terms of time and money, and then try different strategies. Um, we encourage businesses all the time to do what we call as A/B testing, where you want to have different kinds of content, published, and see what is working well, because a small piece of content can have a huge impact on the decision-making factor of your audience. So I think that's really key. And then in your case, obviously, from a marketing perspective, on LinkedIn, the behavior of the audience is very, very different than it is on Facebook or any other channel. Or when they come to your website, they're more engaged, or they're reading your blog. So that's a different kind of audience than those that are actually just reading your content on LinkedIn for the first time. So creating those marketing messages and impacting customers at the stage of the customer journey that they're at is absolutely critical in helping them move forward to introduce yourself as a business. Well, this is great, Jake. I think that we've covered a lot. I want to really thank you for being here today and adding so much value to our audience. If our audience needs to find you on the web, where can they reach you?
yeah, so my personal blog at just jake-jorgovan.com definitely is the kind of the main central hub for everything. But that's for all my blogging and content, everything. And then contentallies.com is the podcast production agency. And leadcookie.com, we are the B2B lead generation agency. So that is the best places to go to find me and the stuff that I'm doing online.
Excellent, Jake. Thank you very much for your time. You have a wonderful day.